A King's Suffering. Unwritten in history, forgotten in time, there once lived a glorious king named Sol. He had droves of loyal, submissive slaves at his disposal. Sol never raised a hand against his slaves. The slaves came to the king because they loved and deified him. They prostrated onto the ground whenever the king stepped foot into the room. The slaves, in unison, recited the king's creed and words back to him. To glorify Sol and his extensive accomplishments, they built a royal palace encrusted with gold and silver. The sun shimmered off the vestibule, leading into the throne room. The entrance's towering and wide expanse threatened the sanctity of all who entered. The king had a queen, and she birthed leagues of children for the king. All the children followed their father's rules without hesitation or question. They never fought amongst themselves and served their royal father in all his endeavors and decrees. By the time they became old enough to talk, the children overwhelmed their father with kisses and admiration. The queen loved her king and relayed to him the news of the kingdom day in and day out, for she was actively involved in the people's welfare. Every problem she brought, the king solved swiftly and justly. The king sat atop his golden throne every day with an artificial smile, when on the inside he was empty. On the outskirts of King Sol's kingdom, the ruins of an old culture was decimated by his army. The people of the culture were boorish and cannibalistic, eating the old to preserve the youth. Rape and theft were common crimes. There weren't any judges nor leaders to stop the anarchy ensuing in the corners of this civilization. King Sol liberated the people and executed all those guilty of the most malicious crimes. But for the few with good intentions, he reformed and integrated them into his own kingdom. There lived an old diseased woman in the ruins. The king gave her a choice, when she was young and vibrant, to leave and join his Eden, but she chose to stay. The woman had never killed, raped, nor done any of the long lists of crimes punishable by King Sol. Her denial bewildered the king, but the king was just and let her stay. When the king left, trouble befell the woman. She became sick with boils that popped at the touch, which spread the pus all over her body. She tried to remedy the blisters, but it made them worse. Her skin receded from her body, exposing raw flesh, but she still stayed, not seeking anyone's help. Years later, after she became accustomed to her illness, she gleaned her wheat fields. Tirelessly working, she came home, relieved, to cook a feast for herself. But as she walked up to her house, a storm ravaged through the ruins of the old culture, sending bricks and mortar flying through the air. Her house was swept away in the mess and flew miles away from the foundation, spreading her belongings all over the land. It took her weeks to get everything lost back and months to rebuild her house. The woman asked herself, why did she suffer so much? She wanted a simple, solitary life without the fringes of a society governing her every move and analyzing her every word. When the young woman grew into her old age, the disease got worse. She had the tenacity to continue on living, more out of routine and less out of an appreciation for life. When she sat outside her decaying home, a group of wandering marauders encircled her. She threw everything she owned at them, but they touched none of it. They wanted her. Ripping off her clothes and throwing her into her home, the marauders took turns raping and beating her. She shrieked in terror every time. The pain never lessened, but only got worse. She swore to every god she could think of. When she felt she couldn't take any more, she asked them to kill her after they were done. An erratic, self-immolating marauder jumped at their opportunity. But the leader stopped and smiled. The marauders left the old woman in the house bleeding to death. She fainted, but didn't die. The next morning, she garnered strength to get up and left her home for good. She looked towards the kingdom of Sol, but went in the opposite direction, towards the unknown. She did not carry any provisions with her, fully expecting that she'll die soon enough. The old woman wandered past bones of old tribes, foreign civilizations, and dense forests. When she finally decided to stop walking, she saw a beautiful, awe-inspiring sight which would crumble and quake the walls of King Sol's palace by comparison. She lay on her stomach, absorbing the infinite knowledge and transcendent stimulation. Her mouth was agape, and she died then and there. While the old woman went on her search for beauty, the king's life remained as perfect as ever. Nothing went wrong, there was never a rebellion, and the king grew bored. The fake smile he put on every day dwindled into a forlorn absence. His eyes became faded. His children asked what was wrong, but he could never answer. What he didn't realize was, and he didn't choose to attempt to unwrap, was he was envious of the old woman. He wanted her last moments of life, a death balanced by debilitating strife and pure freedom. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to support the Simulation Podcast, you can donate to my Patreon account. Any amount would be extraordinarily helpful. The link will be in the description along with all my social media accounts.